Welcome to the podcast The Embodiment Talks, a podcast by the Embodiment Lab with Marion van Opijnen. Taking your role as change agent of societal or education systems requires vision and courage. This podcast will help you take this pioneer's role with more body awareness and confidence, without losing sight of the connection with others. We dive into how we as humans are hardwired, how systems change works, and how both are related. I will take you on my own quest, and I will share background information, talk to experts, and share exercises. We will think, feel, and act. Great that you're here, and happy listening. Good day today, and great that you're here again to listen to a new episode of the Embodiment Talks. It's been quite a while that I recorded my own podcast. I've been interviewing people, which I really enjoy, and I still have a few interviews scheduled. I will post those interviews over the coming weeks, but I thought today it's time for me again to record my own podcast, because I've been observing quite a lot over the last 2.5 years, I think, on people's reactions to situations in society, as we've been living in quite chaotic times where we're coming out of COVID. Let's hope we're coming out of it and it's not just a pause, but coming out of 2 years of COVID quarantines, people around us getting sick, maybe yourself getting sick, noticing the effects of that on ourselves, and coming out of this situation, ending up witnessing a war where Russia invaded the Ukraine. Although I don't think that in societal transformation is like equally damaging, hopefully, as what we now see in Ukraine, for example. But I do think that we can learn from the reactions that people have to these uncertainties in society or in our lives, in how we could deal with them in societal change. So that is why I'd like to record this podcast, and I'd like to dive a little bit deeper in. So first, I'd like to look at the different reactions that we see, and then I'd like to relate that to how you as a change agent or a pioneer can actually use that in your work or in how you view societal change. So first of all, I think I'd like to share some of my own reactions to the situation, and there's like two main points that I would like to reflect upon, and that was 2 years ago when the Netherlands was hit by COVID. I was I felt really numb. I was just like, what is going on? Like, I couldn't really grasp it. I think that lasted for a few weeks, 2 weeks or so, that I was really like, whoa, what's this? Is that possible that we just locked down a whole country, a whole world? Yeah, so that gave me a feeling of numbness, to not knowing what was actually really going on. Also the feeling of it's too big for me to really understand what's going on here. As I always take as a basic view that things are complex and there's never one answer to a situation. So I also felt that here, but I found it really hard to make up my mind of what was actually really going on. Then just now, so 2 years after COVID, when I remember the first few weeks after Russia invaded the Ukraine, I was just trying to really understand it in a different way. So with COVID, I felt really numb, and now I started just looking for a lot of information. There was something in me that wanted to understand Putin, but also probably wanted to understand the whole geopolitics. Just like, okay, what happened? How has it been possible that it came this far, that this actually happened? So I started to listen to a lot of podcasts. I read articles. I listened to a whole podcast about the Tsar history in Russia, and about the Putin's biography, and so I thought, like, there's a lot that I can learn. And of course, it didn't give me answers. It gave me some interesting insights on people's histories, on countries' histories. It gave me some understanding, probably, like how we ended up in this. And yet, I will never understand why whatever history justifies what I currently see going on. And I've also seen reactions from others. I've seen people walking out of the room, not wanting to hear anything about what was going on in the Ukraine or about COVID. And the last thing that I also saw was people trying to convince others, trying to convince me or others about a certain view on the situation. And we saw that a lot in COVID, but I've also seen that now with the Ukraine situation. So what are like the main reactions that I see, just to summarize, is that I see people, and including myself, to look for a lot of information, to try to get clarity on the situation. I see people moving away from the situation. So although they know it exists, but if I don't look at it, I can probably keep it a little bit out of my system. I've seen people trying to convince others, like I know what's true. And although there's a lot that I can say about it, as two things that I'd like to take out of this. And one of that is the illusion of control. So in any way of dealing with the situation, we somehow try to create control over the situation. So the illusion of control is a cognitive bias where, we assume that we can have complete control over a situation. And as we all know that we don't, we try to look for other ways to get control, like by understanding the situation, by trying to keep it out of our lives. And that's the other thing I want to highlight, is by making others guilty. So you're the bad guy and I'm the good guy. I know how to look at this, and you don't, and it's Putin being the bad guy, and it's Ukraine being the good guy, or it's the government being the bad guy on putting regulations into place. So it's that dynamic between the good and the bad, and at least if we can say that somebody else is the bad guy, then at least we've done the best that we can do in this situation. But in both, so as well in the illusion of control as in making sure that somebody else is the bad guy, we fail to acknowledge the complexity of the situation, and we fail to embrace or to accept that we are in a huge not knowing of where this is going to, what will be the outcome, what the effect of that is going to be on our own lives, maybe on on the lives of people we know or other people. And that is something that we don't like. We don't like to be in that space of not knowing. And that is then where the illusion of control kicks in. So when we try to get control over the situation, then, at least I will be able to relate to it, and I will be able to handle it. Okay, and then from this to make a next step to what does this actually mean if we come to social transformation, if we try to take a group along on societal change, we also have to deal with these kind of reactions. So first of all, that takes us to to look at our own reactions to this situation. So what can we learn? What can I learn from how I react to this? So what I see in myself is, like I already shared 2 reactions that I had. One was of numbness, or being in a kind of a disbelief. What is happening here? Is that really true? And the other one was to start looking for information, to try to understand what was actually happening. And I would have loved to kind of be able to live in that hat for a few days to understand how the other one thinks and acts and does things and what have you. And you probably have other reactions that I haven't mentioned or that I haven't experienced. We all have our reactions in our own ways to this situation or to all other challenging situations. So to reflect on that myself and to acknowledge that this is what I do without being judgmental about it. So okay, this is apparently how I now want to deal with the uncertainty that I'm facing, and instead of pushing it away, but acknowledging that the emotions that are underlying that. In my case, I experienced emotions of fear, and also sadness of how we deal with each other if I look at the current situation, but also sadness about the loss of how we were used to do things before COVID, which luckily are coming back again now. So it's acknowledging that in myself, like, okay, that's actually what's going on, and to see my reaction patterns to that, of being numb, like walking around with my sore under my arm, or trying to understand a lot. And by acknowledging that, it's also easier to acknowledge the reactions of others on a similar situation. Even although those reactions may be different, I can still acknowledge, like, okay, so this is how you deal with this. Yeah, I found it kind of hard, and I dealt in this way, and you apparently and deal with it like this. So it also makes me milder to somebody making a comment that, I didn't do my research and I didn't look at it from different perspectives and what have you. Although I disagree, but at the same time, I could also be compassionate to, like, okay, so you are in the mode of pointing to others or holding on to your own truth as part of keeping control on the situation. So that already brings me to that it also helps me to deal with the reactions of others. Because if we want to pursue societal change, and if we share, like, the system faults that we see, it does touch people, because often at an underlying layer, we do feel that there is some kind of truth in that, or there's something that does not work as we like it to work. But if somebody gives words to that may also be scary, because if we know what is going on, we have to act upon it. Or if we don't act upon it, it's like a deliberate choice not to act upon it anymore. So we can't be ignorant about it anymore. So knowledge about these reaction patterns can actually help us to anticipate these as well, and to help people to tune into the underlying emotions or physical feelings that they have that give those thoughts or reactions to a challenging situation. So in short, this actually means that acknowledging our own feelings will help us to acknowledge the feelings and reactions of others to the situation, or to a challenging situation. So my reactions to the last 2 years, and the reactions that I've seen by others on as well the COVID as the Ukrainian situation, taught me a lot about myself, but also about, it was a real life experience of how how people can react to transformations, and that I tried to take my learning from that as well, to see what I can do with these reactions when they are, in relation to societal change, and hopefully and probably at a smaller scale than what we have recently seen. So I hope this podcast gave you some insights as well that are valuable and will enhance your practice as a change agent. So thanks for being here, and see you at the next episode. Great that you listened to this episode of the Embodiment Talks. Please let me know your thoughts about this episode or the insights that you gained. Email me to the address in the show notes. If you want to get in touch with me, or if you have a question or topic that you want to know more about, don't hesitate to send me an email as well. Do you want to be kept up to date? Like this podcast in your favorite podcast app. You can help me by giving a thumbs up or leaving a comment so that this podcast will reach more people. You can find more information about my work on my website www.embodimentlab.nl or my YouTube channel Embodiment Lab. Thanks for listening, and meet you at the next episode.